I've been matchmaking all my life. I introduced my best friend and his wife. I introduced my program director, Kevin Drosch, to Inhala. And now I'm going to match you with Inhala. Yes, you two should sleep together. Skip the sleep center. Avoid the CPAP machine. Get in bed with Inhala. It's a custom-fit oral appliance. There's no bulky hoses or uncomfortable mask. Inhala works with your private medical insurance and makes the process seamless. I talked to the people at Inhala.com, and they're going to help you just like they helped out Kevin and his fiancée. She'll finally be able to sleep through the night while Kevin is using Inhala. Follow Kevin's sleep journey right here on 77 WABC. Now is the time for a treatment that is right for you. Visit Inhala.com or call 844-INHALA-1. That's 844-INHALA-1. So like my program director, Kevin, skip the sleep center, avoid the CPAP machine, get in bed with Inhala. Inhala.com, INHALA.com.
Ditto heads. Attention Bo Scouts.
Goes by the pseudonym Bo Snerdley.
It's time for the Soul of Excellence.
He is a radio host at 77 WABC here in New York.
The Rush Hour is on the air.
Rush.
Now here's Bo Snerdley.
Well, good afternoon, my friends, as it's James Flippin in for James Golden. Hope everybody's getting 2025 off to a good start. Probably the first day back at work for many of you, but that's all right. You're heading home now, and we got you covered here on the Rush Hour. So it's James Flippin once again bringing the flip flock to the Snerdley audience. We're leading you up to Katz and Cosby, and we're taking your phone calls. 1-800-848-9222. 1-800-848-9222. All the latest this afternoon surrounding the terrorist attack in New Orleans and potentially the terrorist attack in Las Vegas. Not clear at this point. Suspects have been identified in both cases, both suspects dead. And the FBI is kind of at this point saying they don't believe there's any link between both these incidents. However, both took place on New Year's Day. Both the alleged perpetrators are formerly members of the military. Actually, the guy in Las Vegas was an active member of the military. And quite amazingly, potentially, but maybe not so much of a coincidence, Turo, this app or website that was used to rent the vehicles used in both incidents. In Las Vegas, it was a Cybertruck, Tesla, tie into Elon Musk. Not sure if that's significant at this point. And then, of course, that Ford electric truck, the pickup truck, that caused so much devastation and damage and wrought tragedy upon the U.S. down in the Big Easy. Now, one thing that's been really occurring to me and causing a lot of discussion on social media is what exactly is happening with the FBI right now, as the Federal Bureau of Investigation has taken over this investigation into New Orleans. And in my view, the FBI, now the point agency on that whole thing, has made it pretty clear they're unable or unwilling to respond to real threats here in the homeland. If you think back over the last, let's call it 4 years, but it really goes even further than that, the FBI has more or less identified some of its key threats, the key threats that it's responding to in the United States, as any number of, take your pick here, white supremacy. Parents at school board meetings expressing concern over transgender surgeries for kids and indoctrination concerning transgenderism amongst young kids. Those are the real threat, you see. White supremacists. And there is a lot that's kind of just annoying me about the way officials are briefing New Orleans in particular. And what about, it's not just the FBI, of course. What about the military? What about how the military has all this DEI focus now? Forced diversity, forced changing demographics. Are those useful, or are those non-useful areas of focus that may have screwed us here? Let's just say it for a second. First and foremost, our hearts go out to the families and friends who lost people during the attack in New Orleans, and there's at least 3 local connections. Princeton University students who worked as brokers in New York City, and then also a young 25-year-old kid from Long Island who was down working at the Superdome. And they're playing the Sugar Bowl. They're playing the Sugar Bowl today, so they're saying basically that things are back to normal in New Orleans. Going to have beefed up security outside of the Super Bowl where they're playing that, the Superdome, I should say. But what about all this non-true law enforcement focus that's been bogging us down with the FBI, with the military? In many ways, I'm not even touching on the potential bias within the FBI and the way in which, in my view and the view of many others, the so-called deep state is what's routinely protected by the FBI. Not necessarily actually advancing its true mission, but potentially other areas of focus. But let's not even get into that. Let's just focus on this DEI stuff and whether or not these federal agencies have been more or less taken over by a focus that doesn't actually root itself in keeping people safe. Now, this guy, Matthew Allen Livelsberger from Colorado, who is the alleged perpetrator behind Las Vegas, active military. Former Army is this guy, Shamsuddin Jabbar. Shamuddin, I don't even know if I'm pronouncing it right, so my apologies. But both of these guys, Livelsberger and Din Jabbar, served at Fort Bragg in North Carolina. Potentially somewhat noteworthy that they both served at that base, but talking to Greg Kelly earlier today, one of our hosts here at 77 WABC, he says that's really not so uncommon, given how many members of the military are deployed to Fort Bragg, trained at Fort Bragg, work at Fort Bragg, and it's a massive military center that brings in a lot of different aspects of that. So the FBI downplaying what's kind of making the rounds on social media concerning potential connections between these two things. Still very early in the investigation. They're still going to look into the phones of these individuals, to backtrack with the electronic paper trail and what can or can't be determined about their motivations. But there's still aspects of what the media is being given, what these officials down in New Orleans are willing to share, that leaves you a little bit frustrated, kind of annoyed, kind of miffed. And I want to play some sound from Governor Jeffrey Landry of Louisiana, a guy who has only been in office in that position for about a year's time, I believe, and identifies in some of the comments he makes here a former member of law enforcement. But at times, hearing him talk about this, it almost makes you think he's kind of a little bit in over his head. A Republican, by the way. So this is not just some sort of political thing where I'm saying, oh, the Democratic governor not doing a good job. But you got to be honest in talking about this stuff. Governor Jeffrey Landry was taking part in this media briefing today, and I'm pretty sure this one has a bit of the exchange with the reporter as well. But let's take a listen, and then I'll share with you kind of my insight, what I was thinking when I heard that.
The message has really changed since yesterday. Yesterday, the FBI said that people should be vigilant, that he did not act alone, that he likely had help. And now you're coming out the very next day and saying he was a lone wolf, everything is safe, the game moves on, everybody had a good time. How can you be so sure just 12 hours later?
Well, we're going to bring him up. All right, but here's what I want to remind everyone. Like, I was a deputy sheriff. All right, I worked in a jail. I worked on the street. I worked on the interstate. I served warrants. I can tell you. Look, in today's world, I get it. Information, we get information like that. Everybody lives in a 15-second TikTok video. We think that life operates like it does on our phones, and it just doesn't. Information changes. In fact, that's why we ask the media for patience. We get information, like I said, no one dumps 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle and puts it together in 5 seconds.
So that's Landry kind of expressing some of his frustration with the push for answers, the push for immediate gratification from members of the media. And of course, that's a natural interaction most of the time, these breaking stories and the push and pull between officials and members of the media. But a key aspect of that I want to play again, I'm going to key in on this and then give you my further comments. Go ahead.
In today's world, I get it. Information, we get information like that. Everybody lives in a 15-second TikTok video. We think that life operates like it does on our phones, and it just doesn't.
See, that's where Landry loses me. Because he says everybody thinks the world happens the way it does on their phone. He says too many thinking that it's all about 15-second sound bites and the rush to information. Here's what he's probably kind of missing in terms of the job that he's doing right now, playing gatekeeper between the official account and people that are digging, looking for facts, looking for information. The world has changed. The world has forever changed as a result of the internet, the smartphone, social media. Nowadays, especially after Elon Musk purchased X, the way that you can't just have nothing but left-wing narratives all the time on all these media platforms. So there's a sense that these officials are annoyed with all of us for trying to get to the bottom of it. But I laid it out at the beginning, right? The FBI has diminished its credibility in the minds of many Americans and in the eyes of Americans who are actually paying attention to what's going on with the FBI. There's a lot of question. There's a lot of uncertainty. Is the FBI unable or unwilling to respond to real threats? Now, Matthew Allen Livelsberger, the guy in Las Vegas, Shamsuddin Jabbar, still a lot we don't know about these people. I already said they're going to go through their phones, they're going to go through their social media, they're going to go through their email. All of this may or may not reveal itself. But we know for a fact, at least per what the FBI is telling us, that Shamsuddin Jabbar had an ISIS flag on the back of his truck, and that he declared his allegiance for ISIS on social media while he was headed to New Orleans from Texas. So if you're telling me that the DEI programs and concerning yourself with white supremacy and writing memos as to worrying about traditional Catholics and their approach to abortion, or criticizing parents who are speaking out at school board meetings against transgender-related issues and critical race theory, if you're going to get into even the way the Biden laptop was or wasn't prosecuted for a time, there's plenty of evidence to suggest the FBI doesn't have its priorities straight. And furthermore, if DEI and white supremacy and transgender and all this stuff is what you're highly focused on, how much are you paying attention to the bread and butter issues, as I might otherwise refer to them, like Islamic terrorism, jihadists, intifada, all the stuff that for decades now, anybody with a slight pulse is aware is the biggest concern in terrorism? You know, just once, I'm curious to see somebody let me know, and maybe you want to do it on the phone lines, 1-800-848-9222, 1-800-848-9222. You can tweet me at @JamesFlippin. You can get me on Instagram, Flippin' Out Radio. And just tell me, what's the indication, what's the example of white supremacist terrorism that has the FBI so on edge? Because, unfortunately, I can give you plenty on the Islamic terrorism side. But the biggest threat is white supremacists and parents at school board meetings or traditional Catholics. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that makes you think the FBI unwilling or unable to respond to real threats. All right, it is Bo Snerdley's Rush Hour. You know how we do here in terms of playing our music. And why right now are we playing Aretha Franklin? Well, on this day in 2018, Rick Hall, American record producer, songwriter, music publisher, and musician, best known as the owner of Fame Studios in Muscle Shoals, Alabama. He died at the age of 85 on this day in 2018, and he's almost single-handedly established the town of Muscle Shoals as a crucible of some of the greatest soul music to ever be produced in the 60s and 70s, and he helped record artists like Aretha Franklin. So the man known as the producer of the Muscle Shoals Sound died on this day in 2018. Rest in peace, Rick Hall. And it's James Flippin here with you for Bo Snerdley on the Rush Hour.
Eden Memorial Chapels understands Jewish funerals can take many forms. Some are Orthodox, while others are more conservative or of a Reformed nature. There's no one better. With services close to all New York and New Jersey cemeteries, Eden Memorial Chapels offer fair and balanced pricing and can provide easy transfer of you and your loved ones to Israel. While you're grieving, they're here to take care of all the details so that you deal with less bureaucracy and have more peace of mind. Go to EdenMemorial.com. That's EdenMemorial.com.
¿Hablas español?
Sprichst du Deutsch?
Kan du norsk?
If you've heard that sound from Babbel before, I bet you do. Babbel is the science-backed language learning app that actually works. With quick 10-minute lessons handcrafted by over 200 language experts, Babbel gets you on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. With over 16 million subscriptions sold and a 20-day money-back guarantee, just start speaking another language with Babbel. Right now, up to 55% off your Babbel subscription at babbel.com/Spotify podcast. Spelled BABBEL.com/Spotify podcast. Rules and restrictions may apply.
James Golden, known popularly as Bo Snerdley.
This is The Rush Hour with Bo Snerdley.
Rush.
James Flippin in for James Golden on this Rush Hour as we move you through the late afternoon. And it was on this day in 2007 when Kristen Kelleher was found dead after an apparent murder-suicide in California. She was 34 years old at the time. Why is that significant in terms of the music you're hearing right now? Well, Kelleher once broke into former Beatle and now deceased Beatle George Harrison's Hawaii home. She made headlines in December of '99 by entering Harrison's Maui estate and cooking herself a frozen pizza. The police say her body was found with that of a man in a car. Both had gunshot wounds. So that was on this day in 2007. And speaking of Hawaii, how about that fireworks accident on New Year's Eve? Yikes. Some kind of big display that got lit on fire and then tilted over, and it more or less fired on the house. It was like missiles going at the carport there. So a deadly incident there, a terrible incident. But obviously the one we're speaking about the most right now is down in New Orleans. The incident in Las Vegas claimed the life of the alleged attacker. And that guy in Las Vegas, a active military member, the accused in New Orleans, formerly a member of the military. So let's check in on our phone lines here as Robert is in Brooklyn, and he's going to join us now on the Rush Hour. What's up, Rob?
Thanks for taking my call. Well, it seems like the alleged people involved in New Orleans and in Las Vegas and the second attempt that was made on Trump, they all have a connection to Fort Bragg. Now, just one person, for example, the alleged person in the Las Vegas incident, was a Green Beret. He had apparently almost 20 years in, and this is a huge concern because the military, we depend on them. These people have their fingers on the nuclear button. And you have an environment in the military where they purge Trump supporters. They purge them. People who didn't want to take the vaccine, they made their life hell. Many of them were thrown out of office and thrown out of their job. Trump says he wants to reinstate them. But they made a horrible, they declared war on Trump people. They demonized Trump people. And when you have such an environment, look what happens. I mean, some responsibility has to be attributed to the people who created such a hostile environment against Trump people that breeds this kind of hatred, that a Green Beret with almost 20 years would basically commit suicide to blow himself up in front of Trump Tower in Las Vegas. I mean, it's just horrific. And these guys have their fingers on the nuclear button. And I mean, so what are we supposed to do? Trump said in one of his posts recently that we're infiltrated. These people were totally infiltrated, not just the people who came swarming in here. These are members of the military. A Green Beret with almost 20 years in.
I hear you. And obviously a Green Beret, that's someone who's at a high level of training and operation and somebody who knows a lot about those different techniques that you're referring to. So it is very concerning. And I think generally speaking, there's a lot about the military that's concerning right now. And I'm never have been a member of the military. Plenty of people in my family have been. And I, like most good red-blooded Americans, people on the right of the political spectrum, I support the military. I think it is vital. But there's a lot about it that often will give you pause. And not the least of which, by the way, is how much money is spent on the U.S. military. I mean, I don't think anybody worth their stones can actually have a conversation about the national debt, the 35, 36, 37 trillion, whatever it is, the wasteful government spending, the overwrought government spending, all the money that goes to Ukraine, and we can talk about that later today, all the money that goes to Israel, the various efforts outside of our borders that cost big, big cash. That's kind of one. I referred to some of the DEI stuff and the focus on things other than being efficient as a fighting force that has made its way into the top reaches of the military. All those big time concerns. And I think that's why the nomination of a guy like Pete Hegseth, who is a MAGA surrogate, and potentially getting him into the Department of Defense as Secretary of Defense is really attractive to a lot of us. And of course, there's other, including voices on this station who aren't as big into Hegseth, but the key is getting someone from outside the paradigm into the Pentagon. I think that's vital. I've said the number one most important member of the incoming cabinet, Kash Patel, the guy who's going to be the FBI director, hopefully. And take you back to the New Orleans discussion we've been having. It's very clear that the FBI needs an overhaul. But in many ways, I think that's true of the military as well. And, yesterday we had a chance to talk about how politics is kind of downstream from culture and the jokes that Whitney Cummings made during the CNN New Year's Eve celebration, shocking her co-hosts and kind of flipping that politics on its head with the CNN audience. That goes to show you things are kind of changing in a lot of ways. And this next soundbite that I wanted to play for you is from a show you may or may not be familiar with, Key and Peele on Comedy Central. And they've got plenty of different commentary that's about any number of things, but this was just a short little thing they did that is about the military in a way, and it's so poignant, I decided I wanted to share it here today. But there's a potential link in terms of New Orleans and Las Vegas, both those perpetrators, members of the military. Fair to suggest that there are likely many members of the military and other Americans who are over the concept of forever wars. And the ages of these perpetrators in Vegas and New Orleans, I don't necessarily know, but they may have been involved in some of the campaigns in Afghanistan and Iraq. And you see what's going on in Syria, and you know well about Russia and Ukraine, and obviously the ongoing never-ending fight between Israel and whoever their neighbors are that decide to fire on them, but also launch attacks. But this Key and Peele skit, it's a drill sergeant marching his troops and doing the call and response. It kind of makes you think.
Pakistan, Yemen, Iraq. Afghanistan, Pakistan, Yemen, Iraq. I don't care if I ever come back. I don't care if I ever come back. From poor families, how far we roam. From poor families, how far we roam. So the rich kids can just stay at home. So the rich kids can just stay at home. When I come home with PTSD. When I come home with PTSD. The VA hospital won't care for me. The VA hospital won't care for me. I'll probably end up homeless out in the dark. I'll probably end up homeless out in the dark. To get laid on screen by Marky Mark.
And he's running alone at this point, realizing. But isn't that kind of sickly true? All that we know about the military and its ability to hopefully keep us safe, that's the mission statement. But who is it that's filling those ranks? And who is it that's making the decisions at the top? And how much potential connection is or isn't there in terms of the link between the rank and file and the top brass? And how much disconnect is there between the rank and file and the top brass who are cared about or caring about DEI and potentially some aspect of whether or not the military-industrial complex continues to grow? And it leads into more money for Ukraine. That's what we found out this week. More money for Ukraine. As the U.S. Treasury Department has announced it will send $3.4 billion in economic assistance to Ukraine to cover the salaries of civilian government and school employees, healthcare workers, and first responders. Here's the thing. 2025. It's a new day. It's a new year. Let's resolve to fund the United States, not Ukraine, in 2025. Is that something we could potentially think about? 50 Cent, Curtis Jackson, who you're hearing as we go to our break here. But why is that on this day in 2003? 50 Cent was arrested by cops in New York after guns were found in his vehicle. His SUV was searched. It had been left in a no parking zone. And police found a .25 caliber handgun, a .45 caliber pistol in the vehicle. Officers said both guns were loaded. Tisk, tisk, Curtis Jackson. He made it out okay. That was back in 2003. So, when we come back, you're going to celebrate? Are you going to celebrate the day before inauguration? And then this is certainly not something to celebrate. I don't know if we'll have time to get into this or not, but how many of you are familiar with this horrific story out of Pakistan? Or actually, I should say out of the UK, connected to Pakistani gangs. Absolutely terrible. And then hundreds of anti-Israel protesters gathered in Times Square on New Year's Day. We'll talk about why that's very profane. As the rabbi told me, it's James Flippin in for James Golden on this Rush Hour.
It's the Rush Hour with Bo Snerdley.
Goes by the pseudonym Bo Snerdley.
Rush.
Now here's Bo Snerdley.
And welcome back to Bo Snerdley's Rush Hour. I am James Flippin, filling in for James Golden. That the dulcet tones of Meatloaf, as it was on this day in 1994 when Meatloaf started a 3-week run at #1 on the UK's album chart with his 6th studio album, Bat Outta Hell, Part 2, Back Into Hell. The LP, which featured the single I'd Do Anything for Love, Also topped the charts in the U.S. and Australia and has sold more than 14 million copies worldwide. And the Sugar Bowl down in New Orleans held a moment of silence today before the game as the University of Georgia and Notre Dame are playing in that college football playoff game. It's scoreless right now in the first quarter. By the way, sad note that singer Wayne Osmond has died at the age of 73. His brother Merrill confirmed that Osmond died in Salt Lake City on New Year's Day after suffering a stroke. Wayne, known for his baritone voice as part of the Osmond brothers. And so, rest in peace, Wayne Osmond. But I wanted to just mention this, as it was literally the day before. This was just yesterday when program director Kevin Drosh and I were talking about this one. The embarrassing moments that you suffer throughout the day, and then you kind of find yourself thinking about that later in the day. Well, this morning, I had one of those moments, and it's kind of funny. It's not always just the embarrassing moment that is in front of a big group of people, or it could be the most inane, mundane moment of your day, and it can still stay with you. So my husband was kind enough to give me a ride to work today because he's now starting a new job and working from home, so he blessed me with a ride to the train. But this one light, traffic light in New Jersey on the way to the train station, it's really long. It's a long red light, the cycle. And there's a glare coming in at that time of day, whatever it is, 7:15 a.m., a big, tough glare coming in. So he's trying to see the traffic light, and I said, you know what? I got you. I got the visor on. I'm going to just stare at that traffic light, and the second it switches over, I'm going to tell you. And I was so hyper-focused, I was dialed in. I had a little viewfinder between the rear view mirror and the sun visor. I was like, on this thing. If it was an incoming missile defense radar during the Cuban Missile Crisis, that's like the same level of focus I would have had. So it waits, still red for the longest time. So my husband's like looking under, and he's getting the glare in his eyes. I said, I got it. I'm watching. So I'm waiting. It finally turns green, and I shouted, grow. Well, I went for green, but then I thought, no, I mean go, and it was the perfect grow. I mean, green does mean grow, right? And so I've been thinking about that moment, that grow, instead of either green or go, the rest of the day. And I don't want to hear anybody out there blaming another kind of green grow for that brain malfunction, okay? I won't hear it. I won't have it. So earlier today, we had a press briefing from the federal authorities and the New Orleans Police Department following that terrible attack yesterday. And I wanted to play something from the governor of Louisiana, again, Jeffrey Landry, as there was a question concerning the use of bomb-sniffing dogs and whether or not they should have been using bomb-sniffing dogs during New Year's Eve on Bourbon Street.
Would there have been canines out on New Year's Eve? Would there have been bomb sweeps done?
Look, I think let me just say this, and either Joe or Rob will correct me. Look, a bomb dog doesn't operate like a drug dog, right? On Bourbon Street, there's a lot of senses, right? A lot of smells. I don't think you can run a bomb dog down Bourbon Street with thousands of people there and be able to sniff out a bomb. What we've been doing, what they have been doing, is certainly a complete sweep of the quarter because of the limited amount of traffic that's been out there. Let me just say this. I think this may help. It would be my hope that as some additional time goes through, maybe closer to maybe the beginning of next week, we will, if we've got it to what extent buttoned up as we could, I would work with the FBI and the city, and maybe we can come up with a timeline to be able to get you those information, kind of walk everyone through from day one through. I think it's extremely premature, and you're really putting us on some speculative grounds to ask some of those questions, because again, it's only been 24 hours. I mean, can you imagine how far we've come in 24 hours?
So again, the prevailing sense you kind of get from some of these officials during this press briefing is just that they're in CYA, cover their ass mode. Because it's like if you don't know for sure what the answer is to that question, then don't answer it. I did a quick Google search, for example. Not always the best solution. Not always going to give you the absolute truth. You always have to have some skepticism. But I looked up, can you use bomb-sniffing dogs in areas with strong scents? And if you've been on Bourbon Street, there are plenty of scents there. No question about it. The quick response and result that I saw was, yes, you can. That they're trained to overlook strong background scents, which, I mean, you would kind of hope would be the case. So why is Jeffrey Landry rushing to answer that question? And also, by the way, cutting off people who, in my opinion, would be better qualified to answer it. You want the press briefings, you want the information, but the rush to either say something or feel as though you have to respond. If you don't know the answer, here's a good rule of thumb in life. Say, I don't know the answer. Mark is in Putnam, and he joins us now. What's up, Mark?
Yeah, well, I read in a book once that half the state of Louisiana is underwater and the other half is under indictment.
Mark, we did say yesterday that the New Orleans Police Department's had its share of historical incidents. It was in 2012. The federal government took it over. You go check out the Wikipedia page. There's a whole section on misconduct. So, look, I'm not alleging anything by saying that. I'm just kind of saying that, yeah, there is reason to believe that there could be a less than optimal performance having taken place here. And, of course, we know the guy, Shamsid Din Jabbar, whatever, was able to get around the barriers that they were supposed to have set up. So a lot of question as to what really happened here. But yeah, Mark, good point.
Well, my question to you is, you guys are a very honorable reporting agency, and I think, as inept as those people are, they're trying to report factual information to people, and to run a pickup truck through Times Square or Bourbon Street or wherever on New Year's Eve, it's going to take you a little while to gather all the information.
That's true. You're absolutely right.
Like a real idiot.
Well, no, Mark, here's the thing. I said yesterday, you have to have some grace. You have to have some understanding. You have to have some patience. My thing is just that if you don't know the answer about bomb sniffing dogs, Jeffrey, then say, I don't know the answer to that. We'll have to get back to you on that. And too often with these press conferences, there's 50 people standing up there. Half the people are never going to actually speak. So I don't know why they're there. And they just kind of seem like a dog and pony show half the time, not really something that's aimed at actually getting information to the people. That's my beef with that whole thing.
Well, you guys are 100% right, and you hit the nail on the head 98% of the time.
Well, thank you, Mark, and have a good rest of the night, and Happy New Year. We're going to turn to Mike in South Carolina now. What's up, Mike?
How you doing, James? Excuse me.
Good.
A shout out to Rich. I'm originally from Nassau County, Southwest.
Oh, nice. And, so you're practically cousins with our producer, Rich.
I'm a paisan too, cousine, as they say in Italian, cousin. And,
well, I'm from Essex County, New Jersey, Mike, so I'm Italian by osmosis,
okay, cool.
As I like to say. I'm Italian by osmosis.
That's a rim shot because I was a drummer back in the day, ba-da-ba.
There we go.
I ball once in a while.
You got
anyway,
it.
I'll tell you what, James, I've heard you. I'm listening half my life to WABC Radio. I'll be 71. Curtis has got me by 7 weeks. He's 7 weeks older, whatever. Yeah. So, what's going on in our country now? 15 dead. New Orleans. Bombings in front of the Trump property in Vegas. And other, demonstrations and, far left terroristic, innuendo. More than innuendo.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll tell you what, my son is his birthday's today. He's 30. And he's doing well. They're up north, and I'm just I did my 25 years with the MTA. I was in transit, then I retired from Metro North Management.
Okay.
So been there. So, and I'll tell you what, hey people, all the good callers out there, WABC has been around for a while, and there's a reason. And shout out to Rita. I might call you tonight, Rita.
All right. Well, you'll have to join Rita later. But hey, Mike, before you go, as a member, a former employee of the MTA, what's your take on congestion pricing?
Well, it's just, I think she's one of the worst governors, and it's like, peak time with Long Island Railroad, off-peak, peak, and this and that, and anything they can do. Curtis calls it, his abbreviations, money-taking agency.
Yep.
They'll try to stick their hands in our pockets and da-da-da-da-da. I got relatives, James, in Jersey, but I'll tell you what, keep doing what you're doing, and I'm not going to stop now listening to Where's My Drumsticks at the Rim Shot.
Yeah, Mike, keep listening. Right. We love you. Thanks for calling. Have a good rest of the night, and Happy New Year. The thing I didn't want to say while Mike was on the phone, and God bless him, is without congestion pricing, how are we going to pay the big salaries at the MTA? Curtis likes to say the Metropolitan, taxing agency, taking money agency. I like to say, because it's movement, right? Or the movement of the transit. They're moving to tax your ass, moving only to tax your ass. Augustine is in Levittown. Good evening, Augustine.
Hello, Jimmy, Flippin. Me and my wife here are part of the Flippin flock.
Hey, and good evening to you both. I hear you both there. Thank you so much for joining. And yes, we are flapping our wings and taking flight here with the Flip Flock. So what's going on, guys?
I love your Grow story before. Very entertaining. I was mesmerized, and it was a great ending.
Well, look, it's like one of those things where you go to say one thing. If anybody has kids or they've been around that instance where parents have multiple kids, they'll say, Bobby, Chris, Tommy, Sean. I mean, you get the dog's name in there sometimes. So. All right, well, you guys having a good one? Hopefully it's been a good New Year so far.
Yes, it has, and I wish you a Merry Christmas, belated, and Happy New Year to you.
Yes.
And then on a positive note, in 18 days, I hope there's signing of 200 executive orders placed in front of President Trump. I hope. Yep. I hope it's so fast and powerful.
You know what, guys? Absolutely. And thank you for the call. From your words to the MAGA God's ears, as we definitely want that to happen. And we also need to have the January Sixers pardoned early in those opening days of the second Trump administration. And like you heard there, just 18 days away. All right, so we're listening to the Platters as we go out to break. And why is that? Well, on this day in 1981, David Lynch, the singer of the Platters, died of cancer. And so we say, rest in peace, David Lynch. But James Flippin here for James Golden on the Rush Hour. And when we come back, going to do a little celebration. It's been a lot. We're kind of dragging it down sometimes with all the talk of terrorism in New Orleans and Las Vegas and congestion pricing. And, it's enough sometimes. But there's reason to celebrate. We're going to tell you why when we come back on the Rush Hour. James Flippin in for James Golden.
James Golden, known popularly as Bo Snerdley.
This is The Rush Hour with Bo Snerdley.
Rush.
Oh, yeah, Get Back. Get Back. It was on this day in 1969 when the Beatles began filming at Twickenham Studios, as it was going to be the rehearsals for the Let It Be album. And they were filming that. The project did run into several problems, including George Harrison walking out on the group by January 10th. So it took just 8 days for George Harrison to have had enough of that particular project. But that's what happened on 1969. And it's James Flippin here with you, filling in for James Golden, Bo Snerdley on the Rush Hour. All right, so in 18 days, President-elect Trump will be inaugurated, but we're going to talk about January 19th as just one day before, it'll be the biggest party in D.C. Oh, yeah. We're doing our Trump dance. You got to do the Trump dance to this one. President-elect Trump will reportedly hold a victory rally on the day before his inauguration. And thank you to our newswoman, Lisa Ritchie, for bringing this to my attention, by the way. She is not as excited about it as I am. But, oh, yeah, a victory rally. The inauguration committee made an announcement saying that Trump will hold a rally January 19th at Capital One Arena, where the Wizards and the Capitals play. The rally will include featured speakers, a list not yet provided. The rally will be Trump's first speech in Washington, D.C. since January 6th, 2021. 5 minutes shy of the top of the hour, it'll be Katz and Cosby keeping you going here on 77 WABC. And we've been talking about so much today, the terrorist attack in New Orleans, the one that's being investigated as a possible terrorist attack in Las Vegas, the various aspects of the FBI and the military, and whether or not focus has been kind of taken away from the right things, and if the eye has been taken off the ball for these federal agencies and for the military. Certainly something worth asking, and certainly something that we hope isn't the case. But that's why I say the most important member of the incoming cabinet for the Trump administration and the most vital confirmation, Kash Patel. Got to clean up the FBI. Got to change the course of direction at that federal police force. Saul on Long Island now. Going to join the program. What's up?
Hey, James. How are you?
Doing well, Saul. What's...
Listen to you. Listen, the best thing, I would love to listen to you 7 days a week.
7 days a week?
Anyway.
You're not going to give me any time off?
No, not for now.
All right.
Anyway.
Well, I guess we can deal with that.
Yeah, it's possible that one day we will elect president of the United States like AOC type, or maybe Anthony Weiner for that matter.
Oh, perish the thought. Anthony Weiner, he's got to host the left versus the right with me on Saturdays and his podcast,
Right.
The Middle.
Yeah, who's going to pardon the Luigi guy on his first day in his office?
You're saying that if a significantly left of center politician wins the presidency and is the occupant of the Oval Office, that somebody's going to pardon Luigi Mangione?
Yes. AOC type, Bernie Sanders, Anthony Weiner, definitely they will pardon him. Definitely.
Wow. Yeah, you know what, Saul? I have to tell you, good call. That is kind of a scary thought. And perhaps just as scary is the concept of it's not that outlandish to actually think about. Not that crazy to think about. I don't know. I'll speak for Anthony Weiner in saying that he would say that's outlandish from his perspective. I don't think he's the biggest Mangione guy. AOC, can't speak for her. So, as we close up shop here on this version of the Rush Hour, something that I just want to mention. There's a couple of things to just clean up. We teased the possibility of talking about those Pakistani grooming gangs in the UK. Do yourself a favor. If you're of a weak stomach, don't read about it. But if you want to know about what happens when virtue signaling and political correctness and caring about offending people outweighs upholding the rule of law, look into that story. And as far as what I said in terms of profane, the word profane, the Rabbi Potasnik, was telling me that actually comes from the words pro, Latin for outside, and fane, outside the temple. So things that you would do outside of the temple, kind of outside, those are things that are profane. And he, of course, was talking about the hundreds of anti-Israel protesters that gathered in Times Square on New Year's Day, waving Palestinian flags and calling for intifada. And Rutgers has reached a settlement of some kind with Pakistani student groups who are really super upset about the way they were treated during protests. All right, we're almost out of time here. Why are we playing what you're hearing in the background here? Well, it's Singing in the Rain. Gene Kelly Singing in the Rain. And we can do this. We can play it all we want because it's now part of the public domain. As of the 1st of this year, Singing in the Rain is part of the public domain. We don't have to pay royalties on it or anything. Kevin, we don't even have to log it in the system. It's all good. So, I don't think there's actually much in the way of rain in the forecast overnight, but you could still go out and sing. And it's James Flippin in for Bo Snerdley on this, The Rush Hour. Have a great night, everybody.